Hi, and slightly late. I think our sound's working, and completely chaotic. Welcome to How to Repair Pendulum Clocks, live stream. Hi, Derek. Thanks for hanging on, everybody, for 10 minutes. It's a long story, a long and painful story. But basically, for the first time in I don't know how long, hi Andrew, that my camera feed wouldn't work at all. And as you can see, we've got our clock in bits now. I hope the sound's working. Somebody give me a thumbs up if the sound's working, so I've turned it off. So apologies for that. Don't know what's happened there. I've been out on the road for all week until today, and having a lovely relaxed day, cleaning this clock, just picking up all these little bits with the Rodico. And then I usually give myself about an hour. Sorry, this is excuses to get the live stream going, and no camera feed at all from the overhead thing. And been using that camera all week. It's been really great. But obviously something has gotten pushed when I couldn't figure it out. So anyway, after, thank you, Andrew, for the loud and clear. So after an hour of frustration, I looked up how to total reset on the camera. And I thought it was my card, sort of like a video card thing, but it wasn't. I just pressed something, but I must say, with all respect to Fuji camera, it's been absolutely faultless and a total workhorse, where I'm probably, well, I'm not asking too much of it, but it's on the road, taking hundreds of photographs a day, and then in the bag, in the van, back here, and then it's a video thing. So I suppose the technology is pretty amazing. Anyway, enough excuses. We're here eventually, and thank you for joining us. As I say, I'm just going around with my Rodico and picking up these little bits. So a couple of things tonight. First thing I've got to say is hi, everybody. Hi, Raoul. Great to see you all. The bad news, we'll start with the second bit of bad news. The second bit of bad news is that after today, we're not going to be back until the 3rd of March, I'm afraid. Actual real work has gotten in the way. Hi, Cole. Finally, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry from my perspective that I'm finally here. We're running a bit late today. Anyway, so I'm working for the next 4 weeks, which is great because we'll have to pay some bills. But it means, unfortunately, there'll be no Thursday night live stream until the I think it's, I'll just let me look at my diary if I can find it on here. I think it's the 3rd of March. Yeah, no, it's worse than that even. Oh, no. Yeah, it's the 3rd of March. I'm pretty sure I will confirm that, but I should be back in the land of living by then. So anyway, I'll put that on Facebook as well, just to remind people. So that's kind of good news and bad news. The good news is there is loads of work in this line, you know, in clock repairing and in the work that I do in conservation. But the bad news is that there's no live stream for a month. Anyway, I'll put it on Facebook. So last week we gotten our 400-day clock or anniversary clock or torsion pendulum clock. Yeah, income, exactly. If anybody's ever been self-employed out there, you know that the one, and it's a total cliche, the big problem is cash flow. You know, yay. Oh, great. Okay. No, that's okay. We're going to make a screw, says Derek. So Springhouse going to be posting. I haven't got the hour wheel return script. That's fine. We're going to make one, or at least we're going to approach that. So yeah, cash flow is an absolute nightmare. And what I want to do, so when I come back from all this kind of work, I want to I want to do more digital stuff. So I've got a whole list of objects lined up, including some clocks, some watches, other things as well for the Reed Repairs channel. So I'm going to give that a good old go for about 6 weeks and see if I can make that part of the income stream. But anyway, that's another story. So last week we gotten our 400-day clock in bits, and today I've cleaned it. So what I did was with the dial and the pillars, they're the painted components. I'll just see if I can find those to show you. I've wrapped them up. Can't be far. Yeah, so the normal chaos is even worse today. Right, okay. So here's our dial plate, and we can see it's got these really lovely little painted flowers on them, these roses. So what I did was I vacuumed the dial and the base. And by vacuuming, I mean actually brushing. So I don't have my brush at hand, but it's, I think, a horsehair brush, a bit like a Glasgow brush. So if you're familiar with, let's just pop that down there. If you're familiar with the Glasgow brush, this is a number 4 Glasgow brush. This one's actually got a goat hair. This is goat hair, so it's really soft. This is kind of a watch one. It's molting a little bit. So you brush off the dust into a vacuum, and that's kind of the first step of a lot of conservation cleaning, because what you don't want to do is to rub the dust that lands on things. Hi, Paul, from Salford. Oh, rainy. Yay, it's not raining in York. Not that I wish rain on you in Salford across there. I was just thinking about Salford yesterday, actually. My partner's son lives over there in a place called Eccles. So we're often across there. Anyway, so yeah, dust is the enemy, of course, of clockmaking and watchmaking to a degree. And really, when you look at dust, as the National Trust have done, in terms of analysing what it is, there are 2 broad components. There's the organic stuff, and that's mostly, a lot of that is us decomposing and getting on things. And then there's the inorganic material like stone, mica, quartz, that kind of stuff. And it's really that inorganic material that's the big problem with clocks, because it lands on the oil, because clocks are typically not sealed. And hi, Ian, sorry we're late today. And it forms this kind of grinding paste. And that's the same when you're surface cleaning something. So vacuumed the dial plate and the base, and it's looking really nice. And then I washed it in, maybe some people saw the Facebook feed, washed it in deionized water with a little bit of Vulpex soap, which is a conservation soap, and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. So that's out the way, wrapped it in acid-free tissue, did the shade as well, try not to break it, so far so good. That's loitering in there. And then that leaves us with the movement, which I'm going to start to reassemble this evening. The mainspring's here. There's the mainspring. I'm going to put that back in the barrel, all being well. But one thing I wanted to look at before that, and even though this is cleaned, you can see immediately it starts picking up bits of debris, is if I can find our screw that's broken. I'm not going to make the screw tonight. There it is, love. So this screw is the screw that holds on. There it is. That screw is the screw that holds on the minute wheel. And the minute wheel is here. Can't quite remember which way around it goes. I can just pick that up with my clumsy fingers, pop that in there. Maybe it's the other way around. But anyway, it holds on the minute wheel. And as you can probably or maybe see here, half the screw head is missing. So at some point, somebody's tightened it up and the screw head is broken. It does happen, particularly when the slot is quite deeply cut. Now, actually, you can see, there's nothing wrong with this in the sense of it's going to be functional, but I thought as a bit of fun, we would make a new screw. So we're going to do that at some point. And I was speaking to Derek, our very own Derek Torshendell. Hi, Mark. Also from near Manchester. It's we've got a good old crowd there from Manchester at the moment, which is really cool. I think about the screw, it's just an exercise really. So we're going to make a new screw. Talking to Derek on the Facebook thing, you can buy taps and dies. I think this is about M1.2, so it's quite small for a clock, but pretty big for a watch. And you can buy tap and die sets. You can buy them. The Swiss ones are really expensive, but companies like Kronos do one, and it's only about £40. So I was going to order one, didn't get round to it. Then I thought, no, what are you doing, Reed? Because I've got a massive stack, and I'll just move the clock out of the way for a second. I've got a massive stack of screw plates. So let's just might have a bit of a change of lens in a minute because we're going to get on the lathe. But anyway, so these are screw plates. I know we've talked about them before. I buy them when I see them on eBay if they're 10 or 15 pounds, and they are how screws were made before your actual, split dies. So before, massive stack of tools already, which is promising. So before this kind of thing came about, a tap and die set, screws were made with screw plates. So these are essentially very broadly pre-standardization, although I think these Martin ones are standardized. And you can see here, I've got an absolute load of them for making screws. So for the clock maker, the minute you get into working on pre-standardized screws, or in fact like this where it's a little bit outside our normal sort of range, then screw plates are incredibly useful. Let's say, for instance, you've got a regular sort of 19th century or 18th century long case clock like the one we worked on the first time we did this live stream, then you are typically not going to find that you've got tap and die sets for those. So of course, what you could do is you could tap out to the nearest size. But from my perspective, from a kind of conservative perspective, basically you would never say never, of course, but you would hardly ever do that. And what you would do is you would either make a screw to match the thread. Somewhere on the Facebook group, oh, hi, Franklin. Sorry we were late this evening. We had technical problem with the old camera. You would, make a screw to match a thread, or you'd make a thread to match a screw, but you wouldn't tap out. Some people do tap out to the nearest size. Probably won't get into that now. But if you want to make a thread, there are broadly there are three ways of doing it. If it's very early, you'll probably like a screw for a spandrel, for instance, on a 17th century clock. You'll probably get away with making that by hand, either by hand filing it or making some kind of jig, a bit of wood or something where you can file the thread. But most of the stuff we're going to deal with, you need more sort of precision than that. So you're either going to use a screw plate, or if you've got access to a screw cutting lathe, then that can be incredibly useful. Now, the problem with most screw cutting lathes is that you've got a fixed range of threads that you can cut, either through a gearbox like on a Myford, or a set of change wheels. So for this modern clock, we can, as Derek just said, we can use BA, if it's BA, British Association, which is a late 19th century standard, or we can use metric. And I think I've only just pulled out a few of these little screw plates, but I think if we find our screw, which I hope I haven't lost now, we can probably find one of these that fits, and we can make a thread. So these plates are all sorts, Andrew, an absolute mix from So this is the Martin one, so a French one. So this is the kind of thread that you'd find on a watch. You can see it says Swiss actually on there. Sorry, not French. Or on a French clock from the 19th century. Some of the others are 18th century. I think this is modern, probably metric by the look of it. So I think that's 2 mil down to 0.7. We've got another continental Swiss one there. I've got another Martin one there. So these are mostly 19th century, probably some 18th century. And there's a whole range of ones for watches. These Martin ones, you can see they've got numbers on them. We've got E, we've got L, another E. We've got 12, maybe they're the same by the look of them. So there's a whole range. These are just some I've pulled out. And so these are broadly pre-standardization or Swiss watch and clock making standardization from the 19th century. And they're just incredibly useful to have. Incredibly useful to have anyway, particularly if you're in the kind of side of the business I am, where you really don't want to re-tap a hole or make a new screw that's a different thread to what's there. Yes, it's a faff. Yes, it takes forever to make the screw, but it's work that you can charge for in a certain kind of part of the trade, because people will pay you however long it takes, an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to make a screw for a particular hole to preserve the thread that's there. So that work is out there, and it's not always massively viable, but sometimes it absolutely is. So let's find our screw again. I rather casually just chucked it away. It's there, look. I could do to hold it. It's not massively easy to hold. So I'm going to escape and see if I can find, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes looking for a particular tool, which is quite unusual. Otherwise, we'll have to use a pin vise. So if you're new to these live streams, you'll know that half the time I'm off around the workshop, and particularly this week, in fact, because everything is just come back from being on the road. But I'm going to look for a screw holding tool. So I'll give it a couple of minutes of searching, and then if not, then we'll just use a pin vise. Yay, almost straight to it. So these things, I know we all like our tools. So I didn't get a chance to change the paper on my bench this week either. So it's all quite scruffy. They might actually be a bit big, but these are screw holding devices. You can see they're probably 19th, early 20th century, a bit rusty. And sometimes there's a complete kind of circle there with a hole drilled in the end. I like that one. And it's just a really convenient way. So if you see these on eBay, or you can make them, you might use them once every 5 years, but they are incredibly useful. And here's an example. So let's just pop that badger in there. Might be a bit big. I know. So there we go. You can see now, if you were making this screw, you can use it actually for turning, making the thread or finishing the thread, or in this case, just for holding the screw. So there we are. It was worth turning up for that alone. I'm slightly surprised with myself that I've actually could find them. I'll just check. It's not going to leap out on the floor, embarrassingly. Yeah, cool. So I'll put these on Facebook group later, because they're kind of quite nice. As I say, it's the kind of thing that you pick them up at an auction, and you can see it's got quite a bit of rust on it. You only use them once every 5 years, but when you use them like that, they're absolutely invaluable. So let's just have a quick whiz through these screw plates. So what you could do if you had loads of time on your hands is go through all the plates and make make a spreadsheet like on Excel with all the pitches and all the major diameters on, but of course you never get round to that. So this is about 1.2. So let's just have a little look. Right, well, it's a reasonable fit in there. So the thing to do is just to try a few, basically. So it's not a bad fit in that one that's marked 1.4. So let's just put a bit of pencil on there. As you will know, if you've been here before, I'm not a fan of marking things with a Sharpie pen, but every so often a little pencil mark is incredibly useful. So let's just have a look and see if there's any of this stuff that's actually a better fit. Obviously, I don't want to go crazy with the thread because I'm going to end up damaging it. A bit wobbly. Oh, that's nice. So of course, you've got to go pretty easy with this. That, in fact, is incredibly good. So whatever that one is there, number 6, that's our best one yet. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see it in the shot, but the old live stream clock from last week or the week before, when it was absolutely going like a train. Super pleased with that. I don't know how often you meant to wind those clocks. I just wound it before we went on air, when I should have been. I should have actually been getting myself organized. No good there. That's too big. That looks too small. Yeah, too tight. So this is like watching paint dry, isn't it? But yeah, screw plates. I don't know why people aren't more excited about them. They're incredibly useful. Again, you know, it's just that if you've got, they're not massively expensive. So that one's a pretty good fit in the region of there. Okay, so we've got 3 that kind of work. So before I make a screw, I'm not going to make the screw today because I don't have any steel and I want to get putting the clock back together. But I'm going to use EN8. So I should write that on. Maybe I can just put it in the chat for people to find what that is. So EN8DM steel. Okay, so I'm going to use EN8 DM, and the reason I'm going to use EN8 is a mid-carbon steel. So the stuff that we're used to seeing most of the time in kind of engineering, I saw Daryl, I think, was making some. Ian said I inherited some some screw plates, lantern chucks, or steel. Which of those did you inherit? Maybe all 3. Knowing, gosh, it's amazing. This lens really makes everything look terribly rusty. It's not too bad. So EN8 is a mid-carbon steel. I'm just going to grab a bit of silver steel if I can see some. So here's a bit of silver steel. And people say, well, how do you know this is silver steel, Matthew? Well, you haven't got to do anything, but it's useful. I don't know. Oh, Harriet. Hi, Harriet. Don't know. I think the DM is for free cutting standard. So it probably contains lead. And the EN is just the standard. I think it's European number or something like that. So you get all different grades of steel and they've got different numbers. Oh, Ian inherited some lantern chucks. Really nice. So good to see you, Harriet. Hope you're okay. Who is also training not to be a clockmaker now. So that's very exciting. So silver steel, you get a lot of people saying use silver steel to make screws. And there's a lot of sense in that in a way, because silver steel is sort of up in the higher carbon steels, about 1% carbon. So it's really good for making punches and fly cutters. And you could make a screw from it and it would harden and blue really well, which is maybe something we want to do. Yeah, I have, Derek. I've got them here. It doesn't fit. And also I stop at 10 BAs, so it's too big. So yeah, Harriet, what are you inheriting? An absolute pile of junk. Hopefully none of this stuff. It's a curse. Anyway, so silver steel, I personally would avoid it because it's actually really tough to machine and get a finish on it. Mild steel would be a lot easier to machine, the free cutting stuff anyway. All right, once we inherit the screw plate, it's fine. But the problem with that is it's not easy to harden. You'd have to kind of case harden it. So EN8 DM, you can get it from clock suppliers. Is brilliant because it's 0.4% carbon. And you can machine it quite easily, but you can also harden it as well. So you can make pinions and things out of it. And it is really good stuff. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to make it out of. But to test this, the theory of the screw plate, we're going to just get a bit of brass wire and see if we can just make a thread that fits in there. So poor old long-suffering lathe here. Let's find our brass wire and a collet. Again, more wandering around the workshop. Brass wire. I've got a feeling that this diameter of this screw is probably the kind of wire that's incredibly popular size. Let's have a little look. I think it's about 1.2. Yeah, the actual diameter of the shank is about 1.2, and the major diameter of the thread is about 1.14. So let's just look for a bit of brass wire that's in the ballpark, and we will file it down. Just a quick way of testing whether we are getting there with our thread diameter. We might have to start with something quite chunky. Oh, there's a bit there. It's 1.6. It's as wobbly as you like, but that never put us off before. And pull it. Got a whopping great big burr on the end, so I'll just file it off. Gosh, that collet's absolutely brilliant. A bit of brass wire in our collet. Try not to cause an avalanche, tool avalanche. Cutters. Chunky cutters are disappeared, so just abuse those little strong ones. Let's just file this up. Point on there and just file a taper. So I've got my safe edge here. I don't want to mark my collet, so if I was being a good clockmaker, I would put a bit of tape on there, but I can't see any and I don't want to disappear again. So I'm just running through the sizes that we're likely to encounter here, if that makes sense. It's always easy to start with, I don't know if you can see that there because of the light. Not a lot I can do about that. I'll just make the camera a little bit less hot. Yes, if you don't want to mark your collet, just get a bit of tape or even a little bit. Filing in the lathes, one of those things that sends some people absolutely bonkers. It's actually like the most useful thing ever, and I think everybody does it, but some people will completely go crazy over it. And I suppose the point is, in particular from a kind of safety perspective, oh, there you go, it's a bit easier to see now. From a safety perspective, if you're filing under power, it is absolutely critical that your file has got a really good handle on it, so it can't hurt the inside of your wrist there. Maybe filing under power is something that I wouldn't want to absolutely recommend, but everybody does it. When you're making screws or valuable of sort of value period clocks, do you ever source material from the corresponding period? I'll get them signed. That's a really good question. Gosh, I mean, the answer is no. But when that opens up a whole worm's nest, or whatever the expression is, of use of types of material, what you'll tend to find in the world of restoration a lot. I don't know whether we've got Jeremy with us tonight, maybe he's not here, and that kind of retail side of things is that you'll often find people ask you to use cast yellow brass. Now that's, I think what you're asking is it actually material that was made in that period? And I suppose some people might do. I'd never thought of it. There was a whole load of correspondence about the authenticity of a clock in antiquarian horology. So let's just start with this bigger and work small. It's a good question. And of course, if you wanted to fake something, you would probably want to find material from that period because it's got trace elements, if anybody ever wanted to kind of do analysis on it. The good thing about clocks is they're not really worth that much. I mean, like the top end of the market might be worth $1 million, which is a lot of money. But compared to, say, the art market or the car market, there isn't, there aren't that many clocks worth £1 million. So there isn't a massive amount of incentive to do that. I suppose where the interest is in getting it to what people might call look right. Now I'm at the other end of the spectrum to that, and I want it to look typically completely different or to stand out as something different. So I don't care about cast yellow brass and things typically, but I have used it. I once made a tripod for a kind of astronomical chronometer thing, and we went to a lot of trouble there to find material that was a similar color to the rest of the object. So good question, unanswerable, but good questions. I'm just going to have a look at this thread here. So let's try one. Now, I'm not making a massive effort to check that this is particularly square yet. And of course the brass is nice because it's nice and soft and it deforms easily. So let's have a little look. We'll find our plate. I'll put my gloves back on. Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you had, I don't know, there is a set of circumstances where you might have a particularly some kind of motivation to some kind of motivation to use material that was from that period. I mean, one thing that I kind of find not exactly annoying, but interesting kind of philosophy is the replacement of glass in clocks. So the clock here, which we did in the, what do they call it? Clock club thing we used to run. There's no glass in it. The glasses got broken at some point. And people might say, oh, well, I want wavy glass. And I think there's a whole thinking that you take Victorian pictures, paintings or frames that nobody wants anymore, and you take the glass out, which always seems like a bit of a shame to me, because you can, I'm just going to check I'm actually working with the correct hole here. That would be a bit embarrassing. Yeah, so there's our screw in the hole. So let's just see if this is anywhere near. It's a little bit on the tight side. In fact, I broke the brass off, but it did screw in there. So we're in the ballpark anyway with that. I've got to get that out now. We're in the ballpark with that touch, so that's really good. So I think the very long and short of it is that I don't need to buy a new tap and die set. One of these is going to be absolutely fine. I'll just see if I can get that out. Otherwise, when I come back in 3 weeks' time to work on it, it'll still be stuck in there. Oh, just nice. More tape on the jaws of the vise. You can't see this. So that thread I'd made there was a little bit too big. I need to go for a slightly smaller size, but shows that it can be done. So that's an interesting point actually about brass screws in brass holes. But that's going to be a pain to get out now. That it's easy for them to go like that and actually get completely stuck. Right, I've created myself another problem there, another little job, because I've got the bit of brass stuck in the hole now, so I'll need to deal with that later. Okay, so there we are, screw plates and a bit of an introduction to screw plates, incredibly useful, and to these little lantern tools. I forgot what Ian called them now, I forget, lantern chucks. You can buy them for lathes as well, I think, on 8mm and 6mm collets. Super useful things. Okay. So we are now going to start thinking about getting our, on that bit of wire, I should have put some oil on before I shoved it in the hole. Anyway, so let's think about getting our clock back together. So we could start on the, we might change lens now actually, because this is all a bit intimate. We could start with the base and things, but I'm not sure there's a lot of interest in that. I'm going to have to deal with this anyway, aren't I, before I get the whole thing apart. Oh, well, that's going to be tricky. Right. Well, I won't do that now because it's just going to take ages and it's going to be boring. So first thing to do is to get our spring in. Let's get rid of that spring. And we've got, and I'm going to just have a quick change of lenses. So you'll probably see all the horrors of the, about to turn off the camera. Warm it up a bit. Cool. Okay. So our pendulum here, which can go back together. So in terms of washing this, just did what I normally do, and that is to wash everything in paraffin first, and then I rinsed it and did a second rinse in Elmer watch rinsing solution, which is a waterless, so it's basically spirit-based solution. And I did that watch rinsing solution, I'm spitting all over it now, because on a clock like this, cleanliness is much more important in that sense than it is in a regular clock. This is kind of halfway between the kind of cleaning you do for a clock and the kind of cleaning you do for a watch, I suppose. So I've got my Rodico somewhere. There it is, which is it's a bit of old Rodico. Well, this is a substance that's made or marketed by Bergeon for cleaning pivots and things. And I've also got some pithwood to make sure everything's super sparky. So yeah, let's just sort this out here. We've got our pendulum, or part of the pendulum, like that. There's another part. Let's find all the bits of the pendulum. We can do that pretty quickly, I think. 1, 2, 3. Spring somewhere, which is there. We've got, what else is there? Oh, there's that thing. Is that it? Oh, no, then we've got the Sam's repaired wheel, which I can't see at the moment. Oh, there it is. Okay, good. Spotting all this stuff. So again, apologies for the slightly scruffy looking paper. Good. Right, okay, so that screws in there, and if I remember, it's a left-hand thread. So slightly counterintuitive there. We've got that spring which goes inside. Doesn't seem to mind which way around it goes, like that. And then, so I want some lubrication on this thread before we finish. I'm not particularly bothered about lubricating that spring inside, but if anybody says otherwise, then of course I will do it. Well, we want some lubrication here because these are, for me, moving parts, moving in relation to one another. Let's just get that screwed in there. We can get it to start. I think we've got to compress that spring a bit from what I remember. There we go. So that's got it screwed in. And yeah, it's quite sort of dry sounding in there. So definitely want some lubrication. In fact, that spring's making a big old noise. So let's just, actually, let's just change my mind. Nothing wrong with that, eh? And let's get some grease in there. I don't know what Derek thinks. But I didn't like that sound. You may not have been able to hear it on the microphone, but kind of sound. So I'm going to use some of the world's most expensive grease on it, which is this. Just again been on the road, so it's got a bit of brown tape on it to stop the end leaping off and it's squidging out. So this is synthetic grease from Mobius. So that tape's pretty manky. Apologies, Mobius. I'm working on a bike project. I bought some synthetic grease by the company Shimano that make bike components, and it wasn't massively cheap, but it certainly wasn't as hideously expensive as this stuff is. This is about £50 for the syringe now. It's crazy. In fact, I bought, so this is where it all squirts out, and it was about 20 quid's worth. I bought some oil. Here it is, still wrapped up, D3, and that too is about £50 now. So it's really showing up. There we are. Absolutely acres and acres and acres of grease on it. So certainly plenty lubricated. And let's just get some oil on that bit, but we can do that later. There and there. Oh, Vaseline. Oh, well, there you go. Petrol, isn't it? Petrol grease. So wind that in there, line it all up. Sorry, got grease everywhere now. Oh well, at least it's expensive grease. And a little bit on there. We'll get some on the top as well. There we go. Let's screw that together. Immediately sounds absolutely loads better. So that's cool. Like that. And then I just want a bit of oil on this thread here when we get going. So I'm going to move this to about the mid position on the basis that when we get our suspension spring on, that's going to be a reasonable point for us to begin regulating. So let's just put these little weights back. Like that. And then what I'm going to do, if I can see it, yeah, it's lurking there. Should have done this before I put it together, actually. Because the pendulum is handled, so the person who's going to get the clock and they're going to be rating it, they'll need to stop it and hold it and then move this knurled wheel here. I might actually take it apart and do it more thoroughly, but I'm going to get the good old favorite microcrystalline wax and just put a bit on our brush, not masses, just a bit on like that, just to give it a bit of protection. It should do this when it's apart, obviously, to get to all these bits and pieces. So that'll actually lubricate the joints as well. So brush it on with one brush, wait for the white spirits to evaporate, and then brush it off. Should do that when it's apart. And then that will just give it a bit of protection. And it actually doesn't look dull when it's dried. It's quite sort of clear and shiny. So you won't notice that just from the fingerprinting. Just pop that on there. Leave all the mess. With that, let's put that on there and get our mainspring. Barrel cap, barrel arbor, there. Gosh, identifying all these parts, it's like one of those crazy game shows as you sort of like, where's the parts gone? So let me remind myself here, I'm just going to go for different gloves because they've got grease on them. And as much as I want grease on the inside, I don't want grease on the outside. It is lacquered, Derek, you're absolutely right. But I'm a belt and braces kind of person when it comes to stuff like that. You see so much fingerprinting on clock movements. So I do remember when we took this out, it was in that way around, wasn't it? So that means that our barrel arbor is in the back of the, goes in like that. I think if I'm correct, eyeglass. Yeah. Yeah, pretty sure it goes that way around. We'll just sanity check it because it's again a bit embarrassing to get the whole thing assembled and it be the wrong way around. Plates. This is the front plate. It's obviously wound from the back. And this is where I'm going to find out that both pivots are the same diameter. They are. Oh, well, there you go. Both pivots are the same diameter. That doesn't help me at all. But let's just get this right. Pretty sure that was underneath when we took it out. And so that's winding that way. It's also running that way. That runs that way. That runs that way. That runs that way. That runs that way. That's a center wheel. And yeah, that's going clockwise. So pretty sure I'm right there. Let's move all that out of the way. And I use the spray grease for my mainsprings, which I really like. I know people use different things, absolutely fine. Of course, the challenge is I've got to find it. I did get it out in something laughably called preparation. So just don't want it to go everywhere. Okay. So this is a spray grease with oh, okay. But Derek says that the earlier clocks weren't lacquered. I've actually had a bit of horror with later carriage clocks, kind of too much grease in there. I didn't need anything like that much, but it carried away. Just wipe a bit off. Needed about a fifth of that amount, if that. Where a lot of some of the very modern carriage clocks I worked on when I used to work on carriage clocks. Yeah, but which is the I'm pretty sure that the barrel arbor goes that way around with the teeth at the front like that. I'm pretty sure it does. Doesn't go in like that. It does at the back. No, it doesn't. Anyway, we'll soon find out when we put it together. That some of these carriage clocks, the lacquer, I found to my horror when washing the clock, and this is washing the like the case in water to clean it, that it was a water-based, but water-based and still soluble, and the whole lacquer starts kind of coming off in big sheets. So the moral there is absolutely do your solvent test before you begin to wash anything. Only the best grease for this show. Yeah, well, the thing about this stuff is it's kind of interesting because without going off on another tangent, there's this whole issue of accountability. Now, it's highly unlikely that it's ever going to come back to bite me, the kind of oil or grease I used on any particular object. But that grease, Mobius still say that the shelf life is 1 year, and it's got the date on it when I bought it, and it's definitely more than 1 year ago. But I'm not going to chuck it away. Yeah, it's £50. The little bottle of oil was £50. But in this last week alone, because I'm doing this kind of maintenance thing and survey, I probably looked at 15 clocks or something. So over a year, that's going to be, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 clocks. So actually per unit, it's not much at all. Works out. I can understand it's different if you are working from home and on your own. So just get our mainspring winder. Sorry, this is off piste again, but it won't be long. Now I remember last week I filed down, didn't I, the hooking to make it easier to get it in and out. So just put the arbor in there. There is a video I made of this, and I think it was on the first ever Open Clock Club thing as well, in terms of putting the spring back in. As I always say nowadays, I've kind of changed my heart on this. I'm pretty happy using this so-called traditional mainspring winder, this thing, and I hold the spring with a pair of modified pliers. But my advice is to get a mainspring winder with concentric tubes. Got my safety glasses on, and just gonna find my pliers too. There they are. And get, gosh, so much looking around today, it's crazy. Just gonna hold the barrel in this cloth. Yeah, get a mainspring winder, one of the Bergeon ones, get rid of that greasy mess with concentric tubes. It's going to make your life a lot easier and safer, more importantly. Being hooked on, there we are. Sorry, a rare moment of concentration. Concentrating is something you typically don't see me doing. So I think the last time I concentrated was 1993. No, that was my exams. Can't have been then. Anyway, it did happen before once. So let's just find our Allen key again. Get this out. So springs in. I think we're on maximum zoom mode now. A little bit of camera adjustment. Gosh, it's all go today. And then I just need to get the arbor out without getting everything greasy. Which is why I was very pleased to cut the arbor down last week. Look in there and see where the hooking is. I think, as I said last week, one thing I don't particularly like about those, some of those mainspring winders with the concentric tubes, is that you use the clock's own arbor, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's how you hold the arbor, and those like pin vise things, I think maybe the winding square gets damaged. One of those Ollie Baker style ones, it's great but not cheap. Yeah, the Ollie Baker one is I think probably the most accessible one nowadays of that kind, and they do seem to work, the sort of aluminium thing. So yeah, absolutely, Mark. Point for discussion. Now, that's what the lower oil is really fast in the movement should be doing. Yeah, the thing is, Franklin, that whole oil thing is driven by the watch industry, and of course they make zero money out of clocks. They must sell about one thing of oil for clocks and hundreds of thousands for the watch industry, which of course, if you take a watch for servicing, probably about the same price as a clock. I don't know, a few $100 or euros or whatever. So yeah, the research, I'm sure, is towards watches and not towards clocks. And of course, in watches, you've got a very kind of different environment. Yeah, exactly. Of course, they want to sell more oil. But again, in terms of that kind of accountability thing, for me, I only use, no, the grease does actually separate. Good question, Harriet. I noticed that the grease does separate into a thin bit and a thicker bit, but the oil doesn't. The oil is fine. I mean, after a long time, you can smell that it's kind of oxidizing, because the stuff, the D series, is partly natural and partly mineral. So I presume it kind of goes off after a bit. But yeah, they obviously want to sell more oil, which is absolutely fine. And again, they want to be accountable for, you know, for the watch industry, which is absolutely fine. I don't blame them at all. Just pick up these bits of junk that are around here. So there we are, springs back in the barrel. Barrel cap goes on. Oh gosh, which way out does it go? Oh yeah, I remember that's the outside, because it's got this mark on it where the screw was digging into it. As a rule of thumb, don't run your practice with rules of thumb. The cutout for removing the barrel cap goes in line with the barrel hooking, but not always. On some French clocks, there are marks cut across here with a file by the manufacturer, and where they've made the thing concentric. So that goes on in a different way. Before I put the cap on, just want to oil the pivot. So I'm going to have to escape again and find my oil. I'd left it for a minute in somewhere. Let's have a wee look. So yeah, I'm basically down to, I don't know, I think we've talked about this many times before, down to 2 oils, basically D3 and D5 for me. You know, I don't really do, I've got some stuff for levers as well, but I don't really deal with platforms and the lever escapement. So here I'm going to use D5. This is incredibly slow rotating. Obviously, I don't know how many turns of the key on one of these clocks. Derek will know for winding. Well, that obviously lasts you a year. So if it's 16, kind of like a normal clock, then this barrel is rotating incredibly slowly. So I'm happy to use a good old gloopy D3. It'll keep those bearing surfaces apart. But obviously, the further up the train you go, particularly with a clock like this, you need increasingly thin oil. So just gonna get our little oiler, bit on there. You don't want masses. You don't want it obviously to run out of the barrel and get into the teeth, but these are quite chunky bearings, so put in there. Try not to get it everywhere. At this stage, absolutely worthwhile making sure that that hook, the barrel arbor is hooked on, because it's again embarrassing. I'm just using a bit of white cloth here, which is not ideal. I prefer to use tissue paper because it's it's more lint free, but avoid, if you can, using kitchen paper for anything like this, because it's just full of fibers. So I think all right, they're different for how many turns. Okay, but we've got a slow moving bearing here, so let's just pop that on. I don't know whether I'll be able to do this with my fingers. Maybe not. Yeah, no. So soft jaws in the vise and just work it round in there. These are the jaws that I use, the kind of fiber ones. It's got a bit of a brush in there. The fiber ones, I think they're really good for this kind of thing. Don't go crazy getting the barrel cap on. Obviously, check that you've got end shake there. I'm just going to work it round. On. Okay, so once your barrel cap's on, check for end shake. Absolutely critical that you've got some there, which we have. We're all good. And that's done. Just going to double, triple check that, in fact, it's hooked on. Yeah, pretty sure it is. Great. We can put that out of the way. And look for some more parts, pillars next in our little clock frame. Trying to keep this thing as grease-free as possible so I don't smear it everywhere. Normally, I wouldn't obviously be a bit neater than this, or a lot neater than this, in fact. There we go. So here's our frame. sweet little clock. Remember, one of our pillars is different from the others. If we remember last week. I hope we've still got 4. Yay! That's a start. And then we'll need our winding work as well. So somewhere here, we've got a shoulder screw for the click. There's our click spring. Oops, there's our click spring. We've got our click. Might be it. Nope. Right, okay. So this is where I've got to be a little bit careful that I don't get the, is that the shoulder screw? Nope. Presumably the click screw is a shoulder screw. A little short one. Again, I suppose this is where experience is incredibly useful, because you can, so these are all the pillar screws here on this side. Ah, there we are. So there's our, if you can see on the camera, there's our shoulder screw. So we know that that is the one for the click there. And then we've got a short one for the click spring. Now you might say, well, why didn't you keep these in a bit of paper or something? And I would actually advise for the beginner that that is what you do. And I am a bit of a beginner with these clocks. So as you can see, kind of making it up as I go along. So those two are a pair. That's part of the case. That's part of the case. Again, it's one of those good kind of competitions to pretend that you know what you're talking about, recognizing all these things, all slightly under familiar to me. I think that's it. Let's get some of these pillars in. So remember, that's the back plate, isn't it? So that goes through there, and we've got our winding gear on the inside. So we can see it from the camera there. Good. Another, I think it was, I was somebody on the Facebook group, can't remember who it was now. We're talking about shadows on clock plates, you know, where components are being fitted, which is another reason why I prefer not to refinish, because it can be incredibly useful when you're doing restorations in particular. So might put that on first, actually. So let's just have a little look at this click here. Now, what I'm going to do is to use a little bit of stud lock on this, just to be absolutely sure, even though it's probably a good fit. Screwdriver. Just see what it's like. Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, borderline. With these kind of clicks, I doubt it's going to wind its way out, but I mean, it's pretty neat. It's probably only been taken out of there a couple of times, but a lot of French clocks, what you find is that those screws can wander out as the threads get worn or they get a bit mangled up or something. So I'm going to just put a tiny wee bit of stud lock on their medium strength stuff. But yeah, this gets people animated as to whether you use stud lock or not. I personally am perfectly happy with it. So again, another little journey. Go. So I'm just going to use this medium strength thread locker. Just put a wee bit on there. You need the tiniest amount. And obviously what we don't want to do is to get any on the surface. It's going to be a bearing surface because that's going to be problematic. So I'll just use an other oiler. Tiny bit on there. That's all we need. We can oil this after. Now, there are some thread lockers that are oil resisting as well. Need a bigger screwdriver to actually finally tighten it up. That's cool. Good. Happy with that. So that needs lubricating. Before we finish it, might as well. That's a bigger screwdriver just to tweak it up. That's good. And then with your click with the shoulder screw, again, they can get squidged down. So just check it's absolutely free like that. Okay, great. Pillars. We know that that one has got a little cutout in it. So that must go there. And it's also gotten a hole drilled in it for a kind of seat board screw thing. I don't know what you call those screws on a torsion pendulum clock. On a long case clock, it would be a seat board screw, that kind of thing. So we need that to be facing in the right direction. So to do that, I'm going to put this in temporarily. It'll give us a better idea of being straight, like that. Because it's annoying if you forget or it isn't quite straight, and when you get the clock assembled, you can't get the seat board bolt thing in. And that doesn't have to be super tight. And again, we've got brass holes in brass screws, so might be slightly problematic there. I think these are pretty much universal, but I'll check. We know that this one is handed. Sorry, I'm not really keeping up with the live chat. Okay, good. This one has to be, I've got the right way around. Yes, I have. Yeah, because it's got that clearance there, the barrel arbor teeth. So we know that this, I presume that hole is in the middle, but you can never presume. In fact, it's further out that way around. Can't be further out both way around, can it? Because that would defy everything. Okay, I'm going to put it that way around. Just find another screw. Tweeters. If you're a bit worried about these brass screws in brass hole situation, then just put some lubrication on. Put a bit of that Renaissance wax on or something just to prevent it from binding, which is what I should have done with my little thing that I was making anyway. So again, just pop this seat board bolt thing in. Check that it's square, easy to forget. Tweak it up, check it hasn't moved, that's good. And then the top two, I will just double check in terms of other, I don't think they're handed, or at least if they're not. On some clocks, 19th century clocks where you've got removable pillars, you'll find that they're dot marked 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many pulleys you've got. I saw that during the week, but in this case, I don't think they are. I think they're just off a very kind of high precision machine. Sometimes the shoulders are different lengths, and they're pretty much interchangeable. At least I hope they are. If you've been using drying media, which I haven't here, it's always worth checking in the thread there that you haven't got something stuck in before it's in the middle. Oh, it's in the middle. Right. Okay. Yeah. The hole's in the middle. Great. Cool. So there we are. So that must be our other screw. So I haven't lost any screws yet. So that's a turn up for the books. Next thing is to get our click on. Here, click spring thing, which goes round like that. And presumably it's the shortest of these screws. I guess it's that one because doesn't need to stick through. That goes in there. Just actually check it's the right one for the hole. Looks like it. Just make a screwdriver. Yep, looks good. Off, that on. And it's going to be compressed, so it's a little bit of a faff getting it in. Might have been easier if I put that on first. See, sorry, can't see because of my head in the way. There we go. Get that so it's square like that. Neat. Neat is yeet, as the young people say. Isn't that right, Harriet? She's probably disappeared. Embarrassment. Just check that that's going to work okay. Yeah, that's fine. The camera's struggling with this, the contrast. It's better on the gray paper. There we go. Okay, good. So that needs oiling before we put it together. Let's just pop those little blued steel screws to one side. Presumably 2 of those are for the back cock and 2 of them are for something that I've forgotten, but we'll discover that as we go along. So it's time to get our train. Let's start putting our train in. We need some different oil for this, for that click. I don't want to use the D5. And the reason I don't want to use a D5 is because if it gets sticky, remember this clock is, at least in principle, wound only once every year, then we don't want the oil going sticky and the small chance of the click holding up being kind of glued down. So I'm going to go back to D3 for this, or something quite a bit thinner, or a bit, decant a bit into my oil. Oil stand, bad form, oops, generous amount there. Bad form to take it, gone far now, at least the cap's on. Straight out to the bottle, of course, because you're going to contaminate your oil. You don't want to do that. So we'll have a different oiler. D3. So sorry about the light now. It's the grey paper is really good. So just a little bit on where the click touches the spring and a tiny bit on the screw, which will work its way inside. You don't need masters, I would say anyway. And then that is lubricated. Good. Okay, let's put our click on the back of here and find some wheels. So wheels, wheels, wheels. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, So we've got 3 lower intermediate wheels, a center wheel, an upper intermediate wheel, and an escape wheel. The pallets can go in after, pretty sure. And we need our click. And I think that's, sorry, I put those out of the way. I think that's it. Can't see anything else that needs. Sometimes on carriage clocks, the hour wheel goes on the inside of the plate. It's actually held on the inside, and the minute wheel screwed on the inside. But in this case, that isn't the case. So we can stick all that on later. Remember, I've got to get rid of that little stud thing, but I'll do that. So let's just get these wheels. And now click, there it is. Ratchet wheel, sorry, not a click. Right, I'm probably going to have to do this a couple of times, figure out how it all goes. How are we doing for time? Oh, it's past. Back away with Jim. Yes, sorry about that, Harriet. Yeah. Embarrassing, Dad. Oh well. Just before I put the barrel in, I'm going to check. We did put quite a decent amount of D5 on these pivots, but I'm just going to double check, A, that I didn't forget, but B, that there is actually visible oil there. So if you want to know whether a pivot's been oiled enough, you should be able to see oil under low power magnification, but obviously you don't want too much because it'll run out and run down the plate and get in the wheel teeth. So a little jiggle. Yeah, the front pivot's absolutely fine. Back pivot's probably, no, it's fine too. You can see the oil when moving around. So let's put the click on. Might as well put it the right way on. So the correct way on, should I say. Goes like that. So let's flip that over and put it on there again. One of those easy to things to do. Embarrassing mistake of the click being on the wrong way around. I'm going to have to move the ratchet wheel being on the wrong way around. Sorry, calling the wrong name. Easier to put that on when it's kind of upside down. I don't know whether I can get the intermediate wheels in yet. Great. Okay, so that's in place. So we'll just, if I can just find my little key thing. You check, nice and positive again. Obviously, you're always listening for that very positive ratchet sound, because as soon as that becomes indistinct, then you've got a failure on your hand or a potential failure. Okay. All right, so I was wrong in the first place anyway, so that does have to go in first. Done. That one there. Teeth are at that end, so that must go there. That one must go that way around. That maybe the rest can go in, can they? After the barrel's in. And then that one goes wheel to pinion, so that goes that way around, like that. Thank goodness these things can pretty much only go together, only to go together one way. Just sanity check it. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, looking off the camera. Again, this is a part of the process where it actually becomes or starts to become moderately exciting, because you think, yeah, it's all going to be in one piece. No doubt I'll have to take it apart again 3 or 4 times, but anyway. There's that. No, there's that even. And there's our escape wheel, which I believe and probably can go around either way. Can it? With my eyeglasses, a little movement stand while we find the pallets. Again, just to sanity check the whole thing. So the pallets, this is the back. Oh, sorry, move that. This is the back plate, this one. This is the front plate. This sticks out the back. The pallets go that way around. So yeah, the escape wheel is in the right way around there. And let's see if we can get this on. Sometimes on bigger clocks, you can put the bottom screws in, just loosely to hold the whole thing together. Might need to change the glasses here, but you can just do it by sort of osmosis. Again, just very gentle pressure even on the plate. We don't want to bend any pivots at this point, and it shouldn't need any massive amount of pressure. So what I'm doing, sorry, just wiggling all the mobiles, end shake, end shake, end shake, end shake, and end shake. And you can see the plates aren't together yet, but that's just because one of these pillars isn't located in the hole. There we go. So just a little wiggle on the pillar and the frame is together. Just give it a bit of a push with your finger to check that there is some rotation, even though we've got no oil on there. Pallets don't need to go in yet. They can go in later. Let's just pop these frame screws in. So really quicker, just to use watchmaker screwdriver to get them started and then use your bigger screwdriver to finish. All right, okay. So Derek says, yeah, you can put the bottom screws in. Yeah, it's really handy is that, again, particularly, I'm not that used to handling these little clocks, but just to get you started. So put the two bottom screws in when you're holding the frame like that, and it just prevents everything jumping apart and going on the floor. I'm not going to oil it yet because we're not going to be putting this together. And I need to deal with that minute wheel bit of brass and stuff next time. But anyway, that's there, that's there. Better not lose the pallets. I don't dry run, but just again, you can just sanity check that it is actually working. I'd actually expect it to, sorry, put it in the middle of the thing. There you go. Just put a couple of clicks on the spring. I don't want to put a lot on because there's no oil on it yet, but you can see it's running away there. Absolutely fine. So I think we will leave it there. A miracle, got the thing back together. I'm going to put all the parts back in that tray and cover it for when I see you next time. So big thank you to Torsion Dell for supplying the clock and helping us out with specialist advice. So on this clock, we're nearly at the finish line. We've got to make up the suspension spring. I did look at Dell's video again today, so you can check out his YouTube channel, which is Torsion Dell, where he demonstrates. You can see just that few clicks, the thing is running like crazy, but it needs lubricating, so not quite there yet. Need to make that screw, need to make a little washer for the friction work, but otherwise I think we are in sight of the finish line here. But as I said, well, I'm not sorry, because I'm glad to have the work, but we are not back here on this channel until the early March. I'll let you know on the Facebook group. If you aren't already a member of our Facebook group, then please come along, join in. It's good fun. We get a lot of people there helping beginners. And so if you're a beginner, then you're particularly welcome. And yeah, well, February is all to you. So happy Valentine's Day. I won't see you then, but I will be there pretty much every day, depending on how things go on the Facebook group. And we'll be back in, as I say, we're back in early March. And God, the clock's still running away. They're really amazing little bit of engineering, these things. Really crazy. They do need to be clean. So anyway, thanks, Harriet. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, all our lovely regulars, Andrew. And yeah, next time we see you, it will be early spring. So yeah, that's something worth looking forward to. Anyway, if you're here next week, I won't be, I'm afraid. Sorry for the technical hitch earlier on. We got it sorted out. Don't know what was going on with the camera. So look after yourselves and see you in a month's time. Thanks then, and bye for now.